Hi everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Everything Dog Training podcast with me, John McGuigan, Glasgow dog trainer and behaviour consultant. Really interesting conversation we've got in line for you this week, speaking to Cliff Erhardt. So Cliff and I have been connected on Facebook for a good number of years now, and I reached out to him and asked him if he'd like to come in and do a podcast. So we set that up remotely, did a nice recording, had a really interesting conversation, and the time that we allotted for it flew by. With lots more to talk about, so no doubt I'll get Cliff back on the podcast in future. If you're listening to this on iTunes, as far as I know, iTunes is the only podcast platform that you can leave reviews, so if you could do me a favour and leave a 5-star review for us on iTunes, it just helps get the podcast out to as many more people as we can to educate them about positive reinforcement dog training. Thanks for coming back and listening again. If it's your first time, welcome, and there's a big back catalogue of other podcasts on this for you to listen to. So Cliff started taking dog training seriously once he started competing with his one dog, Pepper. He competed in obedience, rally obedience and scent detection. After that, Cliff was hooked. He started teaching rally obedience and puppy classes at Saskatoon Kennel and Obedience Club, followed teaching for a few other privately owned businesses in the Saskatoon area. Along the way, Cliff picked up formal training and certifications ranging in dog training, scent detection training, behaviour modification and canine first aid, and as a canine first aid instructor. In addition to that, Cliff is a certified scent work judge with the Canadian Detection Sport Association, the CDSA, and Canine Good Neighbour, CGN, Evaluator with the Canadian Kennel Club. Too many canines and Canadians. So, Canadian Kennel Club. Cliff is currently teaching at Crazytails Canine Services in Saskatoon, ranging from puppy to advanced obedience, scent detections levels 1 to 4, and reactive dog classes. When not teaching, Cliff can be found training with his dog in some remote field in Saskatchewan, getting ready to the Search and Rescue dog testing as a member of the canine team with the Search and Rescue Saskatchewan Association of Volunteers and as a member of Battleford Search and Rescue. So hope you enjoy this episode, guys. We'll get into it and I'll catch you next time. Much love to you all. Awesome. So thanks, Cliff, for joining us. It's 17th of July. We're recording this. It'll probably go out round about the 25th or something like that. Is what we're. So I'm here with Cliff Erhardt, and you're in Saskatoon in Saskatchewan. Is that right?
That is correct. Way up in Canada.
Okay. So for those that don't know, where is Saskatoon and Saskatchewan? Where are you located on the map or on the globe?
So I'm north of the Canada-U.S. border, probably 400 miles north of the Montana, I guess.
Okay.
And we're kind of in the middle of the Canadian nowhere.
Yeah.
Kind of out in the prairies. And if you look at Saskatchewan on the map, we're almost in the center of the whole province.
Okay. And do you border the US, or is there a province between the two of you?
No, Saskatchewan borders the US.
Okay. Do all provinces in Canada border the US?
No. A lot of the maritime provinces won't.
Okay, so Newfoundland,
yeah.
What's super interesting, I was watching a little, it popped up for some reason, and it was two fishermen in Newfoundland, and they've been interviewed by a guy from Cork in Ireland, and they sounded exactly the same. But it's interesting how accents evolve.
Yes, it is.
So you look at the Canadians in Ottawa, sorry, in Ontario and Toronto will probably be appalled at this, right? But some of them sound really American.
Yeah.
Whereas you don't at all.
No, and I even lived in the States for a couple of years.
Yeah, it's interesting. My cousin moved. He emigrated to Edmonton about 10 years ago, I think, maybe a little bit longer than that. And I met him a few years ago and we were chatting, and his accent is exactly the same, except I asked him a question and he went, "Oh yeah." And I was like, "What did you just say there?" That was funny. Okay, right. So that's where you are. So let's find out a bit about your dog training background. So we're going to talk about you do tracking with your, is that a boy or a girl dog you've got?
Girl, German Shepherd named Trinity.
Okay. How old's Trinity?
Year and a half.
Okay. And you've been tracking a lot longer than that, though, eh?
With past dogs, I have, yeah, I've trained them in tracking, but just more for my own enjoyment. One dog I started training in Schitzen before we had to say goodbye, but I did get the tracking part with him.
Yeah.
And then I got the opportunity to join the Provincial Search and Rescue team as a member of the Saskatchewan Association of Search and Rescue Volunteers.
Yeah.
So I took that opportunity, and now I started training to take the RCMP testing.
Okay.
About 6 months into the journey.
So we'll talk a little bit about the RCMP's Royal Canadian Military Police. Yeah.
Yes, Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
Mounted Police. Yeah, the Mounties. And they are. It's seen as one of the kind of really high standards worldwide, isn't it, for tracking?
I believe so. They've definitely got the highest standards amongst the police forces in all of Canada, as I understand them.
Yeah. Okay. So how did you get into tracking with your own dog or dogs previously?
Previously, it's just it seemed like something really cool to do, because I really love making my dogs work and use their nose for all kinds of sport. And I have done a lot of scent detection training.
Okay.
I'm actually a certified scent work judge with the Canadian Detection Sport Association. It's one of my passions because I love seeing dogs do something that comes natural and they just love doing.
Yeah. We'll talk. So I'm just making a couple of notes here because there's lots of stuff we can come back to. So okay. Oh, my hand's not working. Okay. Right. So how would you, if somebody's wanting to get involved in tracking, how would they start if they didn't? So if they had no connections, they didn't have a school to go to or an instructor locally, how could they start with their own dog?
There are some online videos, and I'm kind of drawing a blank right now. See, around here in Saskatoon, there is a really big market for things like that, and I can always refer them to at least 2 instructors in town that teach classes, group classes, and how to get started. But there are a lot of videos now. A lot of Schitzen clubs in Western Canada, they will offer tracking classes, and it's a way for the club to do something that they love, do something that they're passionate about, as well as make money for the club.
Sure. Okay.
So that would be something to look into. Yeah, and just contact a local scent work instructor because they all know all the disciplines, and if they don't do them themselves, they would know who to contact.
And where would you start with? So if you've got a naive dog that's never done anything before, and a naive in the learning sense, owner or guardian, where would you start with them? What would you first do?
If they were coming to me to learn?
Yeah.
Oh, I would just start with just the basics of tracking. Get a scent pad, load it with treats, so the dog has that association for the disturbed earth being something good. You're drawing out that positive experience, and then slowly less and less treats, and then slowly make it into a line. And then before you know it, the dog is starting to follow the odor because they know good things happen when they follow the odor.
And when you're saying scent pad there, that's basically when you kind of trample down maybe 30 centimeters by 30 centimeters.
Roughly. Yeah. I mean, it all depends on the dog.
Okay.
If you got a really big dog that has really exaggerated movements, I like to make the pad a little bit bigger, just so they don't easily walk out of it or swing their butt around and all of a sudden they're half on it kind of thing. So I kind of adapt that to the dog. But yeah, I just stamp down a large square in the grass. It's always best to work on cut grass, maybe 5 centimeters to 10 centimeters in height. Stamp it down, get that smell of disturbed earth coming up too, and the smell of disturbed vegetation, and then start putting the dog's favorite treats in there, and then see how they react to it.
Okay. So the theory, or well, how it works then would be the dog eats the treats, and then the scent, because the treats are on you've got the disturbed ground and the non-disturbed ground.
Yeah.
Between the disturbed earth, the crushed vegetation, the scent that comes off of people, off your shoes, your dander, fabric softener and detergent from your clothes, all these sweat,
all of that adds up to make a scent picture for the dog, and I want them to associate that picture with something good happening.
Okay. And then you said there that you then start, what did the term you used? Start making a trail, did you say?
Yep. Then you start making a track. You start making it longer, and you start getting the dog moving while they got their nose down in the odor, and they're constantly getting reinforced for doing that by finding the treat.
Okay. And then, so this is, excuse me, probably start getting a little bit geeky about this, which I'm going to not try and get into. The dog working for the next treat, the dog actually just starts enjoying using their nose more, so the treat's becomes less important than the activity itself. Is that right?
It does, and it's amazing how fast you can phase out treats, and how much that activity becomes self-rewarding.
Yeah,
and it's just,
why is that? Why does it become self-rewarding?
Because the dog is using their natural abilities. The dog is starting to use something that comes instinctually to them. Now, I read studies about this, and I don't know this to be fact, but to me, this makes sense. I read a study once where they were comparing dogs to human beings. And human beings have, I think it was around 5,000 clusters of cells in their nose that pick up odor.
Okay.
Compare that to a dog who has around 200,000 clusters of these cells that pick up odor, plus an organ in their nose that actually helps fine tune the whole process. And then, all of this sends a signal, like for us, all these 5,000 cells or clumps of cells send a signal to our brain about the size of a walnut. And that part of our brain tells us what the smell is.
Yeah.
For a dog, that part of their brain is roughly 1/3 of the size of their brain.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So when they're in odor, they're using no less than 1/3 of their brain.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you see other interesting behaviors come out. Then you see some focus that you've never seen before. The dog moves differently. It's really getting it. It's like they're scratching an itch they didn't know they had. And it's really nice to see. And once again, all those numbers I threw out, I don't know them to be fact. I've read them on a study, but to me, it makes sense based on what I see.
Yeah. When I'm working, so the bulk of the work that I do is kind of training and behavior problems, but I try and use scent as much as we can, or getting a different understanding of it. And a lot of the time I try and explain to people that the way that the detail and colors that humans see is the same or even more for dogs with the way that they smell. Would that be accurate?
Well, when you think about it, scent is a dog's primary sense. For human beings, it's vision. So we experience the world around us by the sights we see. Yeah. When we have memories, we have visions. Now, when dogs experience the world around them, it's through scent.
Yeah.
So I would guess when they have memories, they're thinking about odor, not visions. So it really paints a picture of how a dog would experience the world around them differently than us. And why wouldn't we want to tap into that?
Yeah. And what's interesting there, the metaphor you said there, paints a picture.
Yes.
So that's still visual.
Yes.
And so many of the metaphors that we use for all of this stuff is, where do you see yourself being in 5 years' time? We don't say, where do you sniff yourself being in 5 years' time?
Yeah, and just the term scent picture in itself kind of sums up that sentiment, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting. And having that understanding or appreciation of the being that lives with us, who's a different species, and how they perceive the world can only help, eh?
Yeah.
One of the other things I'll always kind of like to explain to people, it's kind of like, you know, the Predator movies.
Yes.
And when the Predator's looking and it's like the heat picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you see the heat getting like blown in the wind or drifting off.
Yeah.
You know, so if there's like a big pile of fox crap sitting and the wind is blown into the dog's face, it's like this big massive heat signature or scent signature that's get drifting into the dog's nose. You know, it's really cool, really cool. So your dog's 18 months. Where's her progress just now? Where's she sitting?
Well, right now, I would say we are only covering the basics of the training program right now.
Okay.
So we've started on our tracking. And you know, it's a lot of ups and downs because it's haying season right now. So all of the fields that we track in are, you know, probably knee high to waist high in vegetation.
Yeah.
And next couple weeks they'll get cut. So it seems like every week we're tracking in brand new terrain for our dogs.
Okay.
And which is really, really cool to see because she's still on a steep learning curve. I mean, our tracks, I think the longest we've done so far is only 1 kilometer, and that's because I needed to stop for a break. But you know, she's starting to get it. And then we're also doing article searching, which is a part of the RCMP standard. So we'll take an article of clothing or a piece of an article of clothing and hide it someplace. And then within couple hours later, we'll get our dog out and to search for it. And to find it just based on odor.
How does she know what to search for?
Well, there's a lot of theories on that, but in my opinion, there is commonalities in human odor that the dog can think through and figure out, but she's also looking for something that doesn't belong there.
Okay.
So when we're out in the wilderness, right, there shouldn't be any people there. And if I'm giving her the search command, she knows, okay, this is what we're doing now. I got to find the human odor. So it's kind of like she's finding something that doesn't belong, but that is also human odor.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, sure.
And that's where she really, I mean, right now, that's her strength. That's where we really excelled in our training.
Nice.
I don't think she's ever missed an article yet.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. And what happens? What's the big reward or reinforcer for when she finds it?
Her toy.
Okay.
So I've built it up because she's got high energy. She's a very, very intense dog. And my God, I swear she's got enough energy for 2 German Shepherds. So when she finds the odor and when she first catches it, you see different body movements in her. And then when she hits that scent cone, where she really hits that odor hard, she explodes in energy. She almost jumps, and then she moves into a straight line as fast as she can right to the odor.
Yeah.
And what I've trained her to do, because she moves faster than me, I trained her to go to the odor, then come back and get me. And then we keep doing this until I get there and I can see the article, and then I throw her toy to her.
Ah, cool. Okay.
So it's the whole reward sequence is kind of a reward in itself because she's been doing this focused searching using her nose, and now she gets to, now it's like a pressure relief valve, right? Yeah. So she's releasing that energy as she's indicating to me, and then she'll show me the article about 4 or 5 times, and then I got to be careful though, because I can't lead this to frustration.
Yeah, of course.
Because for her, frustration is pretty aversive. Okay. So I'm always watching carefully and trying to get as many repetitions as I can, because I just know her too well. We could be doing a search at night, and as soon as she catches odor, she's gone. She's not waiting for me. So it could be in the pitch of night and she finds something 200 meters away. How the heck am I going to find that? Yeah. Right? It's okay for her to find it, but the human's got to be brought along too, right? Yeah. So I'm trying to get a indication that works for both of us and that won't add frustration to her.
What do you think the difference? So I'll expand a little bit on that, because I think I know there'll be a variety of people listening to my podcast. I know that the numbers are pretty decent on it, but I don't know what demographics we've got. So whether it's, everywhere they'll be interested in some degree in dog training. Then we'll have trainers, enthusiasts, and hobbyists, sports hobbyists, and a whole bunch of other things. So I'm just going to expand a little bit on that there. So we've got frustrations born from when you're expecting a result and not getting it. Okay, so it's the behavioral term for that would be extinction.
Yep.
So imagine you're pressing the button for the lift to the elevator and it doesn't come. So you press it because you're expecting the lift to come, the elevator to come, it doesn't come, and then you stab it 3 or 4 times, get frustrated and give up, and then take the stairs, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is with the older cars, trying to start them on a cold morning, so you turn the car over, and you know that if you keep turning or pressing the button or turning the engine, you're going to burn out your starter motor. Right, so you're holding that and you're hoping it catches, but that feeling that you get is frustration.
Yeah.
Right. Then anticipation, and that's kind of where you're working. You're trying to keep the anticipation going without tipping into frustration.
Yes, that fine line. I'm always watching for that very, very closely.
Yeah.
And if I see a change in her body language, I know I've gone too far, and then right away I got a reward before that frustration has an impact on her behaviorally.
What changes do you see in her? But I'll talk a little bit more about anticipation, but what do you see when she trips into that frustration? What changes in her body language?
She moves more erratically.
Okay.
So when she's indicating, it's always in a straight line. But if that line isn't straight, or if she's stopping to look at me and pausing, then I know that's a definite change in how she normally does it. And then I think it's pretty safe to assume she's starting to get frustrated and she's looking at me like, come on, what do I got to do? Right? And it's just the whole picture. Like, it's not one thing. It's just, and then she'll also hold her body differently as well. Her stance will change. The whole picture just changes. It's kind of hard to explain without a video.
Yeah. It's interesting and I know I keep referring to my police career a lot, but I learned so much about life and behavior during it. And then so it's been 9.5 years nearly since I left the police, and then studying behavior and then reflecting on all that behavior that I saw. And I remember once going to the guy I was working with we both had a decent amount of experience. Like, I had 7 years in and Scott had about 9 years, and we went to a domestic and we split the couple up. I was dealing with the guy and Scott was dealing with the woman, and the guy started becoming a little bit confrontational, and Scott was in another room. He could hear me, and he just stuck his head round the corner. And you can't see this because it's on radio, You're listening to this, right? But I just gave him a little, and it was like a tiny nod of my head and a relaxed facial expression. We'd known each other for 7 years, and we'd worked with each other a lot. And he went, "Yeah, cool, John's cool." All right. So I just said to him, "It's cool," and I did it without saying anything. It was and it's these pieces of body language that you're talking about here, isn't it? These little,
yes, it is.
And that comes from observing your partner, which is what she is, being present with her. Yeah. Looking at what you're trying to achieve with her, and then how she's feeling about it.
Yeah.
Anything else there?
No, I think that covers it, because I'm really looking for the changes. I'm looking for the changes that she's enjoying it. I'm looking for the changes where she's being focused on what she's doing, because I know if she's focused on what she's doing and her body language looks relaxed when she does it, I know she's enjoying it.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm looking for, because, well, for 2 reasons. For one, everything I do and everything in how I decide to train something, I'm always thinking about, there's 2 things in the back of my mind. One is, what kind of relationship do I want with my dog? What do I want that bond to look like? What's going to work for the 2 of us? And then the second thing is, well, what's our goal? What do we want to achieve?
Yeah.
So I always got those two thoughts in the back of my mind, and that kind of judges my decisions almost instinctually, as long as I'm thinking about those two things. Then I don't have to think about how I'm thinking, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. And then it flows more naturally.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm always thinking about that. And that really, and as long as I hold that thought in my head, then I'm almost naturally more paying attention to her body language and trying to figure out, okay, so how's she taking this?
Yeah.
Right. So there's that aspect. Plus, for the job we're training for, we could realistically have a 10-hour day that we're working. I mean, this isn't a dog sport where you're training for 5 minutes in the ring.
Yeah.
I'm training for an 8 to 10-hour work day in any kind of weather conditions. And we get all the extremes here in northern Saskatchewan.
And that's that would be for a missing person, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
To help find a missing person. So I got to build this up in her where she's going to enjoy what she's doing to the point where she'll do it for 10 hours.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different mindset in how you approach the training.
Do you think every dog's capable of doing that?
No.
Yeah.
I don't. And just because of the physical structure of the dog.
Yeah.
I mean, every dog can be trained to do it.
Yeah.
Every dog can do it, but the duration would really depend on their structure, their physical structure.
So, okay, do you think every German Shepherd's capable of doing it?
No.
Why not?
Because some dogs aren't suited. There's a good chance Trinity won't be suited because she's got a very high prey drive.
Yeah.
And I'm working on that. And I'm trying to make the job more valuable than chasing a rabbit or chasing a squirrel. But that may not work out. That instinct might be too strong in her. So we might have to, settle for something else in the end, or move on to something else she's going to enjoy just as much. And I don't have to worry about her chasing rabbits and squirrels.
Yeah. And what's lovely about that is that you're seeing if she is the round peg for the round hole, but you're not trying to make her a round peg for a square hole or the other way around. You're seeing, and this is always when we're talking about, because it's not, what you're doing is not a dog sport. Okay. It's not yeah. All right. I am going to run the risk of upsetting dog sports people here, right? It's been known to happen. Okay. Right. I'm just going to say it, right? Your work's extremely important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the grander scheme of things in the world, dog sports are not.
They're not life and death.
There we go.
But they're still important.
I get it. I get what's important to people, and it's important for your dog's enrichment and all the rest of it. But in the grander scheme of things, it does not matter if your dog doesn't do well in the ring at a dog sport. It matters hugely if your dog doesn't do well when you're searching for a vulnerable elderly person or a missing child.
Correct. Yeah. And that's why I spent so much work initially on Trinity finding articles, because if she would be missing a few articles here and there, then I would have to question if this is the right path for us to go down.
What's also cool about it as well, I'm just thinking when you're saying there, even if you're not, so say if we're talking, say you've got a dog that can't work that 10 hours, but they can work for 2. If you can't find it within 2 hours, at least they've cleared that area.
Yeah. I'm being a little bit over dramatic when I say 8 to 10 hours, right? But that's just the standard I would want to hold myself and Trinity to. So I know that regardless of the deployment conditions, we can do it. But so when I answer that call, I want to be able to say with confidence, yeah, we'll be there and we'll do our job.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to circle back a couple of things. So you used the word instinctively a couple of times, and instincts. So you've got Trinity's natural inclination to do certain behaviors. Okay.
Yes. That
can then be further enhanced by the environment. Okay, so your feedback loop. Did you listen to the podcast I did with Innes with the Doberman?
Yes, I did. Very interesting fellow, I must say.
He's such a cool guy.
Kind of guy I would love to meet and have a beer with after work.
Yeah, I'm sure because he would really like to. In fact, I'll connect the two of you, right? Ennis is like such a cool guy, right? And he came to me as a dog training client, and we're not, and we're now really good. We're good pals, And he's got a young Doberman who brought in from Czech Republic, I think. And the dog loves, so he's doing IPO, the shoots with his dog. I don't know, they still call it IPO? Changed the name, IPG?
IPG.
Okay. Dog loves the protection part, and he loves the tracking part, and the obedience bores him to tears. The dog, he's just bored by it. He's just like, this is the most rubbish thing in the world, right? And I'm probably been a little bit unfair to the two of them, right? So, what Ennis was saying when he first started doing IPG with Kuro, his first dog, was his dog never barked until they taught him to bark for the sleeve, right?
Yep.
So when people say that he's got a natural inclination to do it, the environment needs to bring that out.
Yeah.
So if your dog never saw a rabbit or a squirrel, she probably wouldn't want to chase.
Yeah, but the minute she would see that squirrel, and the minute she would notice that movement, it would trigger something in her that she probably hadn't discovered yet.
Yeah.
And then that would come out. But you are right. It'll stay there dormant until it's triggered by something in the environment.
And then she gets massively reinforced by chasing the squirrel, because that's what she is inclined to do.
Yeah.
And
I do believe you can use, you can get a dog to use its nose and bring out that same kind of satisfaction for them.
Yeah, I would agree. We're going to talk. I'll talk about
it's just
a second with that. On you go. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and that's just based on my observations with my past 4 dogs that I've worked with, that I've taught to use their nose, and just seeing that massive change in their body language, and the similar body language when they do stuff that I know that they love. And then afterwards, they're just spent. They're done. They're sleeping, right?
Yeah. So you talked about that instinct there. Now, what you also used it, and you said when you're describing you working with Trinity, and when you said it's instinctively, you're talking about your behaviors. Now, I'm probably going to disagree with you slightly. That's probably, I think, moving into, you've done it so many times that you do it without thinking.
So maybe habit would be a better term.
Okay. And it's the reason why I'm just as my work with clients, I have to be, and you'll see that, you just need to see that you say the wrong word in a Facebook post and people jump all over or completely misinterpret it. I think it's really important that we use, our language is clear and we have a clear understanding of the language that we're using.
Yeah.
So that we're not understanding, well, you just do this naturally. Ah, well, you do. Oh, right. Because you've got hundreds, if not thousands of hours doing it. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, for me, I try and, especially when it comes to working with Trinity, I try and make things a habit for me to do.
Yeah.
So I can do them more naturally and I don't have to think about them.
Yeah. And that comes from being present, concentrating on what you're doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And repetition.
Okay. Now, you'd also said there, we're talking about that anticipation into frustration. It's just so that if anybody's listening to this and they're new to this, anticipation is when, so you get frustrated when you're expecting a result and not getting it. But anticipation is the feeling that you're getting, knowing that you're going to get that result.
Yes. And you don't want to let the anticipation go too long, because anticipation can turn into frustration quicker than you may think sometimes.
Yeah.
And really, with my dog, with Trinity, I am always watching for those changes in the body language to tell me, okay, she's starting to get frustrated. We got to, now's the time for the reward. I've stretched it out as much as I can. Okay.
Now, you mentioned as well about, can you explain what a scent cone is? Because I'm going to talk a little bit how we can build this in, these simple exercises in with our life with our pet dogs. So scent cone.
Well, a scent cone is just basically the pattern the odor particles will move in.
Okay.
So depending on, temperature, humidity, and air movement, typically they'll move away from an object that's giving off odor based on that. So they'll move in a certain direction. But at the article, pardon me?
Scent particles will.
Scent particles will, yep. And as the scent particles move away from the object that's emitting them, they will spread out further and further and further.
Okay.
So it's just kinetic energy and gases, right? So as they move away, it almost, in a perfect world, it would make a cone shaped.
Yeah.
Right? Because as it moves, it dissipates. So in a perfect world, that's how it moves.
Now, I don't know if you're, we had adverts or commercials adverts here in the 80s for Bisto, the Bisto gravy granules.
Okay.
Right. And the advert was a cartoon, and Mum put out a pie which was made with Bisto gravy, right? And she put it on the window ledge to cool, and the steam or condensation came off it and floated into the air, and the kids were playing in the background, and you could see it coming in and this snaking under their nose, and then they floated on the scent trail back to the pie, right? So that's a scent cone, yeah.
That's a scent cone, yeah.
Okay. Now, I do this with because we do, I try and build scent work into working with a lot of behavioral clients, because from what you'd said there, puts the dog on task. Yep. The dog's now successful at doing something.
Yeah.
Become confident because they're getting successes.
Really big confidence boost in dogs, at least that I've noticed when I've seen them learn to use their nose. I also teach classes, and I've been teaching classes over 10 years now. I did a basic obedience, just pet obedience class, and there was a German Shepherd in there that had more energy than what his owner knew to do with. And that dog couldn't even sit still for a second. Not a bad dog, but just way too much energy for his brain to handle and process information. So I also got her into one of my scent work classes so we could kind of give the dog something to focus on, give the dog an outlet for that energy, doing something which I felt was a good match for the two of them, not just the dog, but dog and owner, right? And by the end of that scent work class, that dog started giving her focus when she didn't even ask for it. So he was getting the self-confidence, getting an outlet for all that energy. And that, I think, was in big part due to the fact she was practicing scent work with him at home.
Yeah.
So it gave the two of them something to do together. So now they're developing a bond.
Yeah.
The dog's getting a lot more respect and a lot more connection, a lot more, just a better bond with the owner. So now the obedience is going to fall in line. He's going to start giving her focus. And that last class, that dog blew me away because he was actually starting to hunt for the odor.
Oh, nice. Okay.
He wasn't just checking boxes and then indicating on the one that was the stinky one. He was actually looking for the odor, and you could see it in his body language, and he was just all switched on.
Yeah.
And, you could have lit his, you could have been poking him with a stick and he wouldn't have even noticed.
Yeah.
Not that I would do that, but I'm just saying,
well,
he was so focused, he's not going to notice anything else in his environment.
Yeah. It's interesting because when, so the story with my dog, and when I first got him, I knew that scent work was going to be a big part of his life because of just what you described there. Because he was just like a, head full of scrambled eggs and broken bottles, and he just couldn't focus and was just so stressed about it. He still gets stressed outside, but what I started doing with him was I got him hunting. The Kong, just the Kong itself is his, like, just holding that, okay, is he's like, that's the best thing in the world for him. So I had long grass, and I would put out a Kong, I would hold him, or just hold him by his harness, throw the Kong into the long grass, and then when he settled this, just like a tiny amount, release him to go find it, okay? And then we built that up, to, he's getting old now because he's 10ish, there or thereabouts. We used to be able to do probably 20 articles, you know, so we'd do 20 Kongs, so we'd do, you know, do 3 or 4 rounds of, you know, 6 or 7 Kongs. You'd bring them back and then I'd send them out for another one. And when you're saying there about, you know, when you know that when he's on, because the only word I can use to describe this was relentless, you know, but everything about him, it's magnificent to watch. Like his stomach's tight, his shoulders are, you know, it's like watching a confident individual go out and perform, doing some sport or something like that, you know. You see these people that they're just about themselves, you know, on task, ready to go. And when you're saying there about when you know when she's in the scent cone, it's the same as with Logan. So he wouldn't make a very good poker player. So his tail wags left and right, okay, when he's searching for it. But as soon as he gets in the scent cone, it goes like a helicopter, right?
Yeah.
Now, because I know that, I now can watch him and go, he's in that scent cone there, you know.
Yeah.
And what's cool about it as well is that if the Kong has been lying on the grass and he has found one and goes away, he come back and I can see him because he's still getting the detection of the tiny pieces of Kong that are still in that grass. And then he goes, no, it's not there. So he's back in a scent cone, but he goes, oh, that's where it was before, it's not there anymore. And it's because the odor's not strong enough, I take it, yeah?
Yeah, it could be, yeah. That would sound right.
Then he goes on to the next one. And when he comes back in from doing that, now we do it 20 minutes, something like that, 15, 20 minutes, because he's older. And he'll sleep for 4 hours easily afterwards.
Yeah.
Really cool.
It is. Trinity used to be like that, but now I've got to work for about 6 hours before she crashes. Like I said, enough energy for 2 German Shepherds.
Yeah. Because you're training an athlete, eh?
Unfortunately, yes. It's great to watch, but man, if I skip a day of training, I pay for it.
Yeah. Okay. Just briefly before we finish, you were talking about, before we started recording, you were saying about training without conflict. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, once again, that kind of goes back to what kind of bond do I want with my dog? What kind of a relationship do I want with my dog? Trinity is the type of dog that when I use a toy as a reward and I make her work for it, especially her favorite toy, when she gets that toy, she doesn't want to give it back. She'll hold on to it. So, and I've tried to work with her and you know, trade for other toys, trade for food, or just hold the toy and wait for her to let go and just stand there and be, you know, like a statue of a handler. But whatever I tried, it looked like I was just beating her in her body language because it made her so upset. Like she worked hard for this toy. I'm not giving it up. Right. So, and it didn't matter because any approach I would take, and I tried everything I could think of.
Yeah.
It was almost like the more I tried to get the toy from her, the less she was going to give it up.
Yeah.
So it was like, and without realizing it, it was building conflict in our training.
Okay.
So then I decided, well, I'm just not going to ask for it anymore.
Yeah.
So now when we're out working, and we're finding articles or we're tracking and the exercise is done and she finds her final article or gets to the end of the track, she gets her toy as a reward, and then I don't even touch it. We would just go back to the truck. I put her back in her crate, and then she drops it, and then I get it.
Yeah.
So in the end, I'm getting what I want, but I'm not adding conflict. I'm figuring out how to avoid it. And it may not be the best approach. A lot of people would disagree with that, but for us, it works.
So why would you disagree with that?
Because a lot of people would say, well, you got to get the toy back. You got to work through it. You got to figure it out. And I would disagree with that. I mean, it's only a toy. She doesn't do that with anything else. And I can still stick my fingers in her mouth and do things like that. But man, and it's not just the toy itself. It's when the toy comes from me as a reward and I'm amping her up and I'm making it the most valuable thing in the world. And then when she finally gets it, Why would I want her to give that up? She just worked her furry little behind off for it. Let her enjoy it. Let her have her victory. Let her enjoy it. Let her feel that rush, that sense of accomplishment. And then when she gets back in her crate, she just naturally drops it anyways, and is looking at me like, oh, okay, Dad, let's go again.
Yeah. Can we do that again? Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. And if I would work through it and get the toy from her before going back to the truck, she's not going to have that thought process in her head. She's not going to want to go back because we ended it with conflict between the two of us.
Okay. So it starts basically becoming weird or icky. Yeah.
Well, it will, because eventually she'll think about it in terms of patterns, right? We talk about behavior chains, and one's going to develop here where she thinks, yeah, I track, I find the article, I get into a fight with Dad, then I go back to the truck. And then eventually she'll stop at the point of getting into a fight with Dad, and she won't indicate on the article.
Yeah. Yeah. Because she doesn't want to fight. It's not because she doesn't want the reward, it's she doesn't want the fight that comes after it.
Yes. Because she's put it all together in a process.
And what's really interesting about this is why it's like breaking these molds, you know. So I get that my thoughts on dog sports are not normal, right? Okay. They're not normal. But if we don't, and I'm not saying that I'm a pioneer or a visionary at all, right? It's just the way that I think about it. But if nobody changed their thought process about something which was the status quo, nothing would ever change.
Yeah.
So with you, if you were to ask those people that say, well, you need to get the toy back, and my next question is why? Because that's it. And you keep asking them why, and you'll always get the answer, because that's how it's supposed to happen, or she should be able to. And I then say, by whose metric?
Yeah, and that's a very predictable conversation, isn't it? Yeah, but with me, once again, I also try to avoid conflicts. I don't even ask the questions anymore.
Yeah.
I just say, well, this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah, perfect.
And, you know, there's nothing in the standard that says I can't do it this way, so this is how we're doing it.
Yeah. And I remember, you know, Hannah Brannigan she does the Drinking from the Toilet podcast.
Yes. Yeah.
So when Hannah, she did IPO years and years ago, IPG years ago, and she was talking about, this is just even during training, right? This is how insane this stuff is. The dog gets the sleeve and now has to run around in a circle on a tight line, right? Yeah. That's not even part of the trial or the assessment or anything. Right?
No, that's just a training method.
Yeah, right. But that's the way you're supposed to do it, because we have to follow this formulaic approach to it. You're like, well, what if your dog doesn't want? What if he wants to lie down with it? You know? Right? No, he must run around in a circle. You know, it's ridiculous. It's truly ridiculous. But you have to think about these things and question them. Why are you doing that? You know. Okay. Right. Okay. This has been a pleasure. I'm aware we could probably talk, and I'll get you back on because we can talk some more. I'm just aware of people listening to how long this will last, because we've been on for about 40 minutes. So yeah, it's been a pleasure. So thank you. Is there anything else? I was going to ask you. Last question. What have you learned during your life with your dogs that you'd like to pass to others? If there was one kind of nugget.
If there's one kind of nugget, I've already mentioned it. Always be thinking of what type of relationship you want with your dog. How do you want your dog to think about you?
Yeah.
Because when I take my dog out of the truck and we're going to go to work, I want my dog to think, right on, here's Dad, we're going to have a blast. And I don't want my dog to jump out of the truck and think, oh, great, here's the guy who handed my ass to me yesterday.
Yeah.
Because it's a totally different mindset. It's a different relationship. It's a different bond. And whether and to me, it doesn't matter if we're doing search and rescue or if we're competing in scent work or we're doing rally obedience, because I've done all of that. To me, it doesn't matter. The activity doesn't matter. I want that bond. I want that mutual respect. I want that trust. I want my dog to think of me as the best thing on earth.
Perfect.
And you know, and if you have that, and if you got that bond in that relationship, I don't care what you want to train. It just gets 10 times easier.
Yeah. Lovely. Perfect. Okay. No, much obliged to you, Cliff. We'll get you back on and we'll have another chat again. Okay. So thank you.
I'd love to. I feel like I haven't even scratched the surface on anything here, John.
We'll definitely get you back on then.
Yeah, and then we can really geek out on something else.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, John.